A 68-year-old Oregonian man has been officially charged with his estranged wife's murder, nearly 35 years after she was discovered dead in a car trunk, according to authorities. According to a press release from the Washington County District Attorney's Office, Robert Elmer Atrops was charged with one count of second-degree murder in relation to the 1988 death of 30-year-old Deborah Lee Atrops after being apprehended at his Newburgh residence on March 2nd. Robert Atrops, Deborah Lee's husband, reported her missing in November 1988. Robert was 34 years old at the time. Even though they were still married, the pair had split up 5 months prior, and they were sharing an apartment in Salem with their daughter, who was 8 months old at the time. On November 29, 1988, Deborah was at a hair appointment in Teagard, so Robert went to pick up the couple's child from a babysitter in Newburgh. Deborah was allegedly supposed to arrive at the house before 8 p.m., but she never did. Subsequently, Robert contacted other acquaintances and relatives to inquire about Deborah's whereabouts before notifying the Teagard Police Department of her disappearance, according to the authorities. November 30th, 1988. The following day, he reported to the investigators that he had not received a response from his spouse. Following that, databases utilized by law enforcement were updated to include Deborah's car as a vehicle associated with a missing person. Deborah's black Honda Accord was allegedly found by Beaverton Police on December 1st, 1988, following a tip from a city public works employee about an abandoned car that appeared suspicious and had the keys in the driver's seat. According to authorities, the driver's side window of the two-door sedan was down, and the registration plates were missing. According to the police, Mrs. Atrops' body was discovered inside the car trunk, and based on the way her body was arranged, it seemed that she had been placed there after passing away. Witnesses reported seeing the automobile there on November 30th, 1988, early in the morning. According to an autopsy conducted on December 2, 1988, Mrs. Atrop died of physical assault and strangulation. After being investigated for over 30 years, the case ultimately hit a dead end. In 2021, the case was reopened by the Multidisciplinary Cold Case Unit of the District Attorney's Office for Washington County. According to the press release, the cold case team was founded in 2020 in collaboration with the Washington County Sheriff's Office, following the approval of grant from the U.S. Department of Justice. Investigators claim to have re-examined forensic evidence and conducted multiple witness interviews over the course of the following 18 months. On February 28th, the charge against Robert was finally filed. Robert Atrops was indicted by the grand jury with one count of second-degree murder. After a search warrant was executed at Atrop Newburgh's residence on Thursday, March the 2nd, he was brought into the custody of the Washington County Jail without any complications. On September 4, 2012, at around 5:35 p.m., Yonkers Police Department officers responded to a 911 call regarding a suspicious item discovered in the woods. First responders discovered a rotting human body wrapped in a huge black garbage bag when they arrived at the scene. After taking over the investigation, detectives from the department's Major Case Squad and Crime Scene section identified the victim as 26-year-old Pamela Graddick, a resident of the Bronx. Pamela was shot twice in the head at a place outside of Yonkers, and investigators found that she had been discarded in the woods in an effort to cover up the crime. Early in the investigation, Wanda Veggia was marked as a person of interest by the police. She was the girlfriend of Pamela, and they resided in the same apartment. Veggia informed Pamela's family 1 month prior to the body's discovery on August 13, 2012, that although Pamela had gone away over the weekend, the things she was supposed to have taken with her remained. Pamela's family filed a missing persons complaint to the New York City police after discovering that she didn't show up at her job that morning. The short-statured Wanda Veggia could not have taken the heftier Pamela's body from their flat to the isolated spot in the woods, according to the investigators. After a 2-year investigation, the case was turned over to the Yonkers Police Department's Cold Case Unit, because the investigators were unable to find enough evidence to bring charges. Wanda Vigila, age 41, was interviewed by investigators in January 2022. During the interview, Vigila came up with a confession. She claimed that she had shot Pamela inside the Bronx apartment they shared due to present domestic disputes between the two. She asserted that John Torres was the one who gave her the weapon. She moved the body from her apartment to the woods with Torres' assistance. Wanda Vigila and John Torres were both placed under arrest in March 2022. Torres was accused of hindering and tampering with physical evidence, first-degree prosecution, second-degree criminal facilitation, and other felonies. After the arrests, City of Yonkers Police Commissioner John J. Mueller stated in a statement that time only serves to strengthen our resolve to find the answers to these horrible crimes. The Yonkers Police Department takes great pride in putting the needs of victims and their families above all, while working tirelessly to bring them justice. I'm hoping Pamela's family and friends will feel somewhat relieved as a result of these arrests, and I commend our cold case detectives for their outstanding work in solving this case after all these years. Excellent work. Wanda Vigila was given a 20 years of life imprisonment sentence in June 2023 for the murder of Pamela Graddick. In court, Tawana McClellan, Pamela's sister, said this, "I hope it burns in your soul that you took my sister away from me and from all of us." According to Fairfax County Police, a 36-year-old lady from West Springfield was found dead in her house over the weekend after suffering several stab wounds. Her death has been ruled as a homicide. Around 12:30 on Sunday, Robin Warr Lawrence's body was discovered by a friend who had gone to the modern home on Reseca Lane to see how she was doing. Nicole, the 2-year-old daughter of Lawrence, was inside as well and seemed to be unharmed. Authorities stated that an autopsy will be conducted to determine the exact time of Nicole's mother's death, whilst they did not know how long Nicole was left alone. We're talking about more than a brief period of time, according to police spokesperson Warren Carmichael. After undergoing a liver transplant in 1993 at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, the kid was brought to Fairfax Hospital for monitoring before being returned to her father. Police have not yet established a motive for the stabbing, which has shocked the community that barely recalls having an incident of burglary, according to hospital spokesperson Ollie Lawrence. According to Carmichael, there are still a lot of unanswered questions in this case. Answers to many of the questions remain elusive. According to Carmichael, there was no proof of a sexual assault. He declined to comment on how police think the attacker got into the house, which is located in The Crossing, a neighborhood 2 blocks from West Springfield High School, on a peaceful cul-de-sac. According to a neighbor, Nicole was brought to the neighbor's house on Sunday by 2 women who asked to use the phone to contact the police. The women said that because Lawrence's husband, a U.S. Air executive, was out of town on business, he was unable to reach his wife via phone. Later, the women had been called by the husband, who asked them to see how she was doing. According to a spokesperson, Ollie Lawrence, the airline's vice president of human resources, was in Nassau, Bahamas for business. Having worked for the company since 1978, he was recognized in 1990 with a Managerial Achievement Award. Robin Warr Lawrence was employed at the Merchants Tire and Auto Center's office in Manassas. The Merchants store is located nearby, and Lawrence frequently brought her dark gray Nissan 300ZX to get service there. When word of the murder reached the staff, they were shocked. According to Kevin Berry, the store's assistant manager, she was simply a genuine sweetheart. She always brought her car in, so everyone in here knew her. Why someone would want to kill her is beyond me. It's just awful. Although DNA was discovered at the scene, no match was established at the time. 2019 saw the start of cold case investigators' collaboration with Parabon Nanolabs, a Northern Virginia-based business that specializes in genetic genealogy, research, and DNA phenotyping. The organization labored to construct a family tree in order to identify potential suspects. The organization makes use of algorithms that employ unidentified DNA data to forecast biological relationships and physical characteristics. A digital composite image produced by Parabon Nanolabs was compared to photographs of 51-year-old Stephen Smirk of Niskayuna, New York, taken in 1988 and 1998. Detectives from Fairfax County went to New York and got a confession to the murder from Smirk. According to Police Chief Kevin Davis, Smirk is being held on charge of second-degree murder and is being extradited to Virginia. In 1994, Smirk served in the Army and was stationed at Fort Myer, which is now called Joint Base Myer-Henderson Hall. According to Davis, Smirk has no criminal past and is not presently under suspicion for any additional offenses. There was no stated explanation for Lawrence's murder, and it seemed to have been an act of randomness. 59 years old Carol Reiff was a resident of Gloucester Township, New Jersey. She occupied a residence within the Lakeview apartment complex. Officers of the Gloucester Township Police Department were dispatched to the Lakeview apartment complex on June 21, 2013, in an attempt to locate Carol, who had failed to appear for a scheduled family outing and was not answering her phone. Carol wasn't in her apartment when the police got there. Her car was in the parking lot, and her keys were still in her apartment. She was thereafter officially reported as missing. Then, 4 days later, investigators discovered Carol Reiff's body in a forested area behind an abandoned complex maintenance building off Lower Landing Road, not far from Route 42. Due to decomposition, an autopsy was unable to confirm the exact cause of death. Potential DNA evidence was found at Carol's apartment during the preliminary investigation, which included an empty beer bottle and a pair of her jeans. Unfortunately, DNA testing at the time did not yield definitive answers. With the advancement of DNA analysis over time, investigators now have access to more equipment that can gather evidence, raising hopes of apprehending the culprit soon. It has always been my goal that when this case is closed, it would protect other people from having to go through this as a family and prevent further deaths, according to Detective Jeremy Jankowski of the Camden County Prosecutor's Office. Then, on May 11, 2023, Joseph Reiff, then 59 years old, was taken into custody and accused of killing Carol Reiff. The U.S. Marshals Service, Camden Division in Moorestown, took Reiff into custody. Following that, as he waits for a detention hearing, he is being housed at the Camden County Correctional Facility. After the arrest, investigators disclosed that Reiff, a maintenance worker who resided next to Carol's apartment, had been questioned at the time Carol's body was found. According to officials, Reiff acknowledged to complimenting Carol in the past and informed authorities that he would frequently see her outside during that interview. Furthermore, he asserted that he had never entered her apartment. Despite that assertion, new DNA testing strongly suggests that Carol and Reiff contributed to the DNA profiles recovered in Carol's apartment, which were derived from the jeans and the beer bottle. Since Carol Reiff vanished on June 21, 2013, and her body was found on June 24, 2013, the Gloucester Township Police Department and the Camden County Prosecutor's Office have never forgotten about her, according to Gloucester Township Police Chief David Harkins. Our goal has been to bring Miss Reiff and her family justice. We'll take every measure required to bring those accountable before the law and prosecute them. It is our obligation to be the voice for victims and their families, and we take this role extremely seriously. I am incredibly proud of the investigators' cooperation and effort, as they had contributed countless hours of work to make this arrest today. Patricia Joseph was a 56-year-old mother and a cafe owner from Fort Jones, California, in 2005. On July 15th of the same year, she went missing from her house. She didn't have her phone, handbag, contacts, or glasses when she left her duplex flat. Furthermore, Multiple blood droplets were discovered on her bed. 3 days later, a kayaker in the Klamath River in California discovered her body. She was barely half-clothed. During the autopsy, it was discovered that she had been murdered by someone. She had been strangled and had sustained blunt force injuries. 2010 marked the 5th year since the case's inception. Following the emergence of a witness who provided testimony suggesting that Philip William Fraze was connected to Patricia's case, Fraze was placed under arrest. Fraze was a marijuana farmer from the Laytonville region of California. Prior to her death, Patricia allegedly worked for Fraze as a trimmer. At the time, Fraze was accused of killing co-worker Stephen Richard Schmidt and was being held in the Mendocino County Jail pending trial. Stephen, a 49-year-old migrant, shared Fraze's residence in a motorhome on Bell Springs Road in Laytonville, California. Stephen was tied to a tree when his body was discovered by a cadaver dog. Fraze was ultimately found guilty of that offense and given a 3-year prison sentence. In Patricia's case, the Siskiyou County District Attorney released Fraze in 2012 without filing charges because there was insufficient evidence. Sadly, the investigation was abandoned since the investigators had no more leads to pursue. To investigate Patricia's case and resubmit evidence to the Department of Justice for additional research, the Sheriff's Office established a forensic evidence and cold case team in 2021. This team uses contemporary tools to review physical evidence and assigns cold cases priority. At last, on February 6, 2023, 75-year-old Philip William Fraze was taken into custody once more and indicted of killing Patricia. Working on the case, Siskiyou County Sheriff Jeremiah LaRue stated that the analysis yielded strong indications linking Fraze to Patricia's death. Our investigators' tenacity paid off in the form of the arrest, which is evidence of our unwavering dedication to bringing violent crime victims and their families to justice. Our cold case team will keep devoting its attention to these instances. I want to thank the District Attorney's Office for their cooperation and applaud everyone for their dedication to this inquiry. We hope that Patricia's family finds closure and healing via this arrest, and our thoughts are with them. Patricia's family posted on a Facebook page honoring her life, saying, "We miss you like crazy, Mom," and that the time for justice is long overdue. Fraze is still being held under $2 million bail and an extra $15,000 bail due to a charge of failing to appear. In 1996, 35-year-old Terri Turachak and her 3 young children resided in Denver, Colorado. Her body was discovered on October 5, 1996, by Denver police and medical officials in her apartment located in the 1900 block of East 17th Avenue. Something blunt had struck her in the head. In addition, she'd been strangled too. Investigators were informed by witnesses that there had been some noise in her apartment the night before she was killed. Her body was sampled for DNA by the investigators, but they were unable to connect the results to a potential suspect. There were no witnesses, and detectives had no solid leads to pursue. Following that, the case became cold. Ricky Dawson, 62, was extradited to Denver in January 2023 after his DNA was linked to the DNA collected at the murder site in Terri's case. He was 35 years old at the time when he took her life. Afterwards, the extradition, Terri's brother James had the following to say: "We never gave up, and we never forgot." When they informed you that he was being extradited, it all got very real. After running a criminal record check on Dawson, detectives with the Denver Police Department discovered that he had been arrested there in August and September of 1996. According to those documents, he was in the Denver region at the time Terri was killed. At the moment, Dawson is housed at the Suwannee Correctional Facility. On August 8, 2004, his DNA was matched to a case from 2001 in Panama City, Florida. He has admitted to killing the individual and abusing them. Dawson was still serving his 25-year jail sentence from the 2001 Florida case when he was extradited. Dawson is also suspected of involvement in a 2000s execution and assault case in Seattle based on DNA evidence. Similarities existed between Terri's case and the victims in terms of their injuries and manner of death. The Seattle police have not yet submitted their case to the King County prosecutor, and they are still looking into whether he committed that felony. Dawson was accused with killing Terri and abusing her when he appeared in court in Colorado in February 2023. According to Terri's brother James, there is now sufficient evidence to accuse Terri, perhaps making the charges stick and effectively imprison him for the rest of his life on paper. She was an amazing mother. James recalled, everything she ever did was for her children. He claims that although family grows over time, time hasn't become any easier, and that it will never be whole again. James remarked, "It's a huge chunk that none of us will ever know how it ended up. She was a lovely soul who lost so much. She would have loved having grandchildren. He hopes his sister soon receives the justice she is due. Forgiveness is a virtue, but that's not who I am anymore. Maybe someday, but not right now," James replied. Terri's daughter Sarah Oakland stated, "My hope would be that he would get the execution penalty, but I know that's not possible in Colorado. We wanted to assure him that we remember, and I believe we're all praying that he rots in prison for the rest of his miserable life." In 2009, Larry Fuller, then 49 years old, resided in Ignatius, Colorado. He was a diesel mechanic by profession. Larry was married to Paula Silva, with whom he had 4 children. Colorado has been their home since 2000. Larry and Paula spent the evening of December 31, 2008, celebrating New Year's Eve at the Sidekick Bar, located at 677 Goddard Avenue. While Larry was on his way home, he was shot by an unidentified assailant. Less than 2 hours had passed since the new year, when he passed away from his wounds there. Initially, the investigators' hypothesis was that the motivation was related to a fight that happened at the pub. However, Paula informed them that there had been no arguments between the pair that evening. Regretfully, investigators had no solid leads to follow and no witnesses. Shortly after, the case became cold. Sadly, Paula Silva died in 2015 without ever knowing the identity of the person who killed her husband. At the request of the Ignacio Police Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation received primary investigative responsibility for the investigation in February 2023. The organization issued a fresh appeal for assistance from the public. Investigators did a great deal of interviews, and it eventually paid off. David Hendren, 38 years old, was detained in the Navajo Nation in Arizona on May 18, 2023, and he was accused of killing Larry. In a press statement, Lisa Cole Brenner, a spokeswoman for the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, stated the following: "The CBI interviewed witnesses during the course of the year-long inquiry, which eventually resulted in the identification and apprehension of David Henderson. According to Cole Brenner, the agency is unable to speak further on the matter because the arrest is under seal of approval. Information regarding the location, duration, and type of weapon used in Fuller's shooting has not been made public." Paul Silva's daughter, Monica Escalante, claimed that her mother never recovered from what had occurred to her dad. The arrest seemed surreal to her. The investigator who notified Monica of Henderson's detention, according to Monica, stated that Henderson stated to the police that he had misidentified Larry and did not intend to kill him. "I never once believed that they would manage to solve the case. It's like a dream come true," according to Monica. Monica was 25 years old when Larry passed away. For Monica, Larry was a father figure, and she considered him a very capable and compassionate person. Monica stated the family was haunted by Larry's killing. For years, she and her 2 brothers had heard whispers in the neighborhood about various people being involved. Monica stated, "We just lived in fear, and I don't think my mom ever healed from it." She would most likely cry uncontrollably if she was still alive, from both delight and despair. At present, David Henderson is awaiting extradition to Durango, where the La Plata County Sheriff's Office will lodge him in jail. Following the provision of funding for DNA testing, authorities in New Mexico have solved a cold case murder that dates back to almost 4 decades. On a July evening in 1987, Donna Sue Hyatt had last been seen. Witnesses claim to have seen her about 9:15 p.m., leaving a store in Carlsbad with a tall Caucasian male. At about 11:40 p.m., Donna's daughter returned to the Elm Street home they shared and discovered a horrifying scene. Donna was lying dead after being stabbed, strangled, and subjected to assault. Despite pursuing every clue available, the investigators were never able to identify the anonymous man or determine the reason Donna might have spent that tragic night with him. The evidence from within the Elm Street residence was gathered and preserved by the forensics, but not much could be acquired from it, as forensic science was still in its infancy. The case gradually became cold, until years later, the Carlsbad police have declared that they have identified a suspect in Donna's murder and that they have been collaborating with a DNA technology laboratory. They claimed that DNA from the resurrected body of a guy called Michael Ruff Wigley matched that from the 1987 crime scene. Furthermore, it has been determined through interviews that Wigley was present in Carlsbad at the time of the murder. Detectives Landgraf and Nice discovered during the follow-up investigation that Michael Ruff Wigley was under suspicion for 2 other assault cases in Central Texas in the early 1980s. In one of those Texas cases, Wigley was indicted, found guilty, and subsequently given a prison sentence. Wigley passed away in a car accident in 1989, which detectives reportedly learned about after he was released from prison. Skeletal remains were found in August 1983 in a wooded location in Crossville, Tennessee, about 25 feet from Sycamore Lane. The remains, according to a forensic pathologist, belonged to a black male who was probably between 20 and 25 years old. The victim had suffered numerous stab wounds. The victim's name remained unknown, but the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation identified a suspect. Following the investigation, the person was charged in May 1984 and subsequently entered a guilty plea to taking the victim's life in exchange for a 20-year prison sentence. While the perpetrator of the crime was imprisoned, the victim could still not be recognized. Searches for the Cumberland County John Doe persisted over time, and a sample from his remains was sent to the University of North Texas Center for Human Identification in 2007 by the University of Tennessee's Forensic Anthropology Center. In the hopes that the guy would one day be recognized, a DNA profile was created and submitted to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System, as well as the Combined DNA Index System. But no matches appeared at all. Agents from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation sent a sample of the man's skeletal remains to Othram in the Woodlands, Texas, in December 2022, as part of the Unidentified Human Remains DNA Initiative for Forensic Genetic Genealogical Testing. After creating an appropriate DNA extract from the skeletal remains, Othram scientists employed forensic-grade genome sequencing to create a thorough DNA profile of the unidentified guy. The profile was used in a genetic genealogical search by Othram's in-house forensic genetic genealogy team, which helped produce investigative leads that were forwarded to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Using the investigative leads from Othram, an intelligence analyst with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation locates possible family members in Michigan. One of those people was contacted by agents who verified that he had a brother he had not spoken to in 40 years. In order to ascertain whether the possible family member was connected to the unidentified individual, agents managed to secure a reference sample of familial DNA. Kenneth Levall Thompson was positively identified as the John Doe by additional DNA testing and a follow-up inquiry. He was born on November 4, 1965, in Detroit, Michigan. Investigators are hoping that this new information would bring Kenneth's family some much-needed closure as they last spoke with him in 1982 or 1983. Regretfully, the lone picture of Kenneth that his living relatives could find was from his early years. Tennessee Bureau Investigation is requesting that anyone who was acquainted with Kenneth Thompson during his lifetime and has a photo of him from the late 1970s or early 1980s get in touch with them. The number to reach TBI is 1-800-TBI-FIND. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of unsolved cases.